Happy Friday, Sretan Petak. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, I answer 5 questions from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, expatinCroatia.com, my consulting sessions, email, and people who write them in the sky. So I've got 5 great questions for you today, and I am in Makarska at a friend's house, and I'm just going to show you the view for a second so you can see it because it's pretty rad, guys. Check it out. Isn't it beautiful? So I spent the day in Makarska today chatting with a couple of people. One of which is Andy, who is the admin of the Digital Nomads Croatia group on Facebook. My guess is if you are a digital nomad, you are in that group. Oh, my hair's doing a weird thing. I'm going to go ahead and fix that. There we go. That's worse. Anyway, so we sat and just geeked about bureaucracy for like 5 hours. It's just, I really obviously love doing this. I think that that's abundantly clear, and I'm just such a nerd for this kind of stuff, and it was really fun to just sit and just talk about the law and MUP and rules and stuff. Like that would probably be boring to most people, but to Andy and I, we just dove in headfirst and chatted about that and had a really nice lunch. If you ever come to Makarska, there's this restaurant called Decima, which is really good. And I went to Decima the first time a year ago, probably almost the day, actually. That's entirely possible. With some friends last year, and that's where we went. And then Andy's like, oh, I got this place for lunch. I don't know if they're going to be open yet, but we got to go there. And we roll up and it's the same exact place, but their food is excellent. So if you're in Makarska, I would definitely go to Decima. And then after, I met a friend of mine who's here behind the scenes at the tennis center, and we were gonna do 5 questions down there, but they decided to do all of the construction today. So there were, 4 construction projects at least that were going on down there. So we hightailed it up to her place, and you can see the mountains here behind me. And now we're going to go ahead and get started. So I've got 5 great questions. I'm pretty excited. In fact, the last question, I'm going to tell you what the last question is first so you know what to expect. But someone on one of my consulting sessions yesterday asked me what was the biggest challenge that I faced when I first came to Croatia 11 years ago. And it really, I don't think I've ever been asked that question quite in phrased that way. And so it made me think about what those things were. And I don't believe I've really told those stories in a while, or at least maybe not in that context. So I will be answering that as our last question. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us, I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. So here are 5 Croatia questions. This first one comes from Linda through our 5 Question Friday forum, which you can get to that forum at the link in our profile or in our newsletter or on our website, a million different ways. Of course, you can always just send us a question on DM or in comments, but she filled out that form so that she could be featured here. How is the euro going in Croatia? Are Croatian people experiencing significant price rises, as did Italy and Greece when it arrived? How much more expensive is it now to live in Croatia? This is a great question. We have not talked about this yet. So, yes, it's way more expensive. That's the answer in a nutshell. They implemented rules and laws and stuff, and even a monitoring department to prevent price rises when Croatia changed from the Croatian kuna to the euro. It happened anyways. So most of the prices that we had on December 31st of 2022, they went up significantly in a day. So on January 1st, everything went up. It was just, it hurts. Because we already had inflation last year. Everybody went through inflation last year around the world. And so we got hit twice, first with the inflation and then with the conversion to the euro. And it's been a bit of a bummer. And as far as the percentage increase, it's varied. I've seen, it's negligible as maybe like a 5% increase up to like a 60% increase. It's been a bit insane. and we were all worried about that. I mean, most of the people, I honestly, I can count the number of people who wanted the euro on this hand. Nobody else wanted it because they were so concerned that the prices were going to rise. And that's exactly what had happened. Now, I have spoken with some people who are either economists or people who follow that kind of stuff. And their argument is, well, in the long run, it's going to be beneficial for Croatia. That in the short term, yes, you're going to see price rises, but eventually it's going to even out. And I don't know if that's true. We're just going to have to wait and see. But the thing is Croatia's salaries were already really low. The cost of living here was already high in comparison to the salaries that they have in Croatia. So it wasn't, it was already a bit of a problem, and then it's been exacerbated. Now, there are a lot of factors that go into play in terms of what has been increasing the cost of living in Croatia. All these small priced items, going to the supermarket or buying a coffee or buying small price items, all those prices went up because of inflation and then the euro. But then the cost of real estate, both renting and buying, they have all gone up exponentially. And that's not necessarily associated with the euro. That's associated with a high demand and short supply. And that high demand is for a variety of factors. There are a lot of foreigners who are coming to Croatia, and they have much different expectations on what they are willing to pay for renting or buying property than Croatians. They have more buying power than Croatians. So something that would be really expensive for a Croatian, they would consider a bargain, potentially consider a bargain compared to what it is that they paid back at home wherever it is that they came from. So as a result, there's just kind of been this steady increase of prices. So yes, the cost of living has gone up. There is a site called Numbeo. Whenever anyone asks me about the cost of living, that's the one that I usually give out. I find that their costing is the most accurate. Now, I will admit that I haven't looked at it since the euro changeover, so I need to take a look at it. But for the last few years, I have felt that it was a pretty good representation of what that cost is. And it'll show you Croatia, but then you can also drill down to the different cities. If you'd like a link to that, feel free to send us a DM and I'd be happy to send that to you. But yeah, I think that there's definitely an expectation from abroad that Croatia is going to be cheaper than it is, and it isn't. It's not a cheap place. It was very inexpensive, I found, when I first got here, but it has changed, rapidly over the last 11 years, but especially the last probably 3 years or so, things have just gotten a lot pricier. So it's important that if you're thinking about coming here, that you really kind of seek out the information to understand what that cost is like, so that you can understand what to expect, rather than coming in here just assuming because it's Eastern Europe and it's not a major world power that it's going to be inexpensive, because that's not necessarily the truth. So thank you so much, Linda, for asking that question. So next, this comes from Mohammed, also through our 5-Question Friday forum. I have received the white card, temporary residence permit, from the police. I need to travel to the USA for a week. Is it possible to use this card to travel outside Croatia and come back again to receive my biometric residence card? So I want to explain what he's talking about. So whenever you are approved for temporary residence, you are given a temporary residence card. It's a little white card about this size, and that's your proof that you have been approved for residence, but that you do not yet have the biometric hard residence permit yet. So that's what he's talking about. So he needs to travel before he gets his final permit. Yes, he can use that as proof that he has residence in Croatia for the purposes of getting back over the border. That's not a problem. So whenever you are issued that white card, you need to make sure you do not lose it, because when you go to pick up your hard residence permit, they are going to ask for it back in exchange. So that's really super mega important that you keep that document safe. Thank you so much, Mohammed. All right, next, this came from Olga through one of my consulting sessions. Can I use a court interpreter to attend the courses and take the barista test? So if you want to open up a coffee shop in Croatia, you have to have a barista license, or you have to have an employee that has a barista license. And I honestly didn't even know that that was true, that that was a thing that exists, but apparently it is. And there are a lot of businesses that require some kind of license or permit where you have to take a course and take a test to get a permit to be able to do that activity. Being a tour guide is an example. Being a real estate, doing any kind of real estate sales is another thing that you have to take a course and get a permit on. But so is making coffee, which, you know, if I really think about it, coffee is big business in Croatia. So of course they would take it seriously. But it's given in Croatian. All of these tests are given in Croatian. So she wants to open up a coffee shop, and she wants to know how she can take this test and get the permit if she, you know, doesn't speak Croatian fluently. So she can use a court interpreter for that purpose. So you just have to pay that additional time. A court interpreter is essentially a translator that is registered with the government. They're technically called court interpreters, but colloquially, which is a word I cannot say very well, obviously, we just call them translators. Okay, thank you so much, Olga. And thank you to Carol Ann, our newest team member, who did the research on that. So thank you. All right. So next, this came from Katie. Katie is one of our most favorite fans in the world. We've featured a few of her questions here on 5 Questions. So I had a consulting session with her. I finally got to meet her face to face, which was really awesome because we've been communicating for a lot of years now. So she asked, is PDV charged when buying a car from a private seller? So PDV is VAT, value added tax. So in Croatia, if you're an American, it's kind of like sales tax, but that PDV is added to most purchases, and it's 25%, which is one of the highest in Europe. I think the only one that's higher is maybe Hungary. I think it's 26% there. So yeah, it's a pretty hefty charge. Now there are some things that are like tourism related. I think they're maybe 13 or 10%. They keep changing it. I don't know. They can't really stick to one number and just leave it there. And then there are some like really necessity items that are 0%, but for the most part, everything is 25%. That's why appliances are so expensive in Croatia, because there's a 25% tax that's added onto it. So she's asking, just to circle back to the question, is does PDV get added when you're buying a car from a private seller? And the answer is no. The only people that can add PDV to the cost of something are companies that are registered in the VAT system. So when you open a company, you do not have to be in the VAT system, PDV. You're not required to. You're not required to until you take in at least 300,000 kuna worth of income. And I know I'm saying kuna and not euro because I'm sorry, but 11 years with the kuna, I'm still thinking in kuna. But 300,000 kuna, I think, is approximately 40,000 euros, something like that. So you're not forced into that system. And once you're in the system, you're in it for 5 years. So if your company is not in the PDV system, then that means when you issue invoices to clients, your customers, you cannot add that 25% tax on it. But if you are in the system, then you do add that. Expat in Croatia is in the VAT system. Sad face. But we were not in the system for a really long time, and we are now. So when you're buying from a private seller, they're a private seller. They're not a company, so there's no chance that they would be in the PDV system, so therefore they can't charge you that 25%. So thank you so much, Katie, for that question. Okay, next, this came from Jelka, also in a consulting session. Oh, am I on my last one already? Did we just move? Oh my gosh, we're on the last one already. Holy cow. They always sneak up on me. Okay, so this last question, which I mentioned at the beginning, what was the biggest challenge when you first moved to Croatia? So I'm going to tell you 2. I'm going to tell you a little one, and I'm going to tell you a big one. So the little challenge I had is I couldn't find the grocery store because I didn't know what grocery stores looked like. Grocery stores look different in all different kinds of countries, and I felt like in Croatia, it's really common for grocery stores and even like, I want to say pharmacies because in the States, like you have DM here. You have DM and you have BIPA, but then you have pharmacies that are separate. So like the DM and BIPA and stores kind of like that, they love to frost over the glass or like cover the glass. You can't actually see what's inside. So it was really hard for me to find supermarkets. And I remember I lived on Jian, for anyone who knows Split, so kind of the edge of Split, like second to last neighborhood before you get into Stillbridge. And I was doing my shopping in Split 3, which is like 2 kilometers away, and taking my groceries back home. This is the way it went for, I think, about 2 months before I realized that there were 30 supermarkets between where I was shopping and my house. But I had no idea. I had no idea. So that was one. That was a small challenge. The big challenge I had, can anybody guess what it was? It was MUP. So, okay. At this time, yes, it is possible that you can go to the police to apply for residence or deal with your residence and someone not speak English to you. That is a possibility. It does happen. It's way more frequent. But when I was applying for residence the first time 11 years ago, that wasn't remotely an option at all. So when I first went to apply for residence the first time, I went with my real estate agent because when I was looking for an apartment, she was like, you need an OIB. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And so she took me to the tax office and she helped me get my OIB. Then she was like, well, you need to apply for residence. You need to tell the police you're here. And I was like, all right, I'm along for this ride. So she took me to the police, and she's communicating with the woman behind the glass. And the MUP, I don't know how to refer to them ever, but the woman at the foreigner's desk was screaming at her in the MUP station. How dare you bring this foreigner in here that does not speak Croatian? I had been here for all of 8 days. I have no Croatian heritage. I didn't know anything about Croatia before I got here. There was no way for me to learn really about Croatian bureaucracy or anything before I got here. There were no resources. The websites of the government were not in English. There was just nothing to know, and it's just... I wasn't going to know Croatian, but she was furious. And so they were just screaming back and forth at each other. Anyway, she eventually allowed me to apply for residence. Fine, whatever. And then the second time I went in, there was a woman, the real estate broker had connected me with a woman to help me open my company because when I first came to Croatia was not in the EU yet. I was married to an EU citizen at the time, but it wasn't the EU, so we couldn't just waltz in like EU citizens can now. You had to open up a company, and you had to invest 20,000 kuna in that company and start paying yourself a salary, and that was the way that we were able to get residence. So the real estate agent connected us with a woman who helped us open up our company. And she's the one who then went to the police with me the next time. And then after that, I couldn't just continue to ask them to go to the police with me. I had to do it on my own. And so what I would do is I would think about the simplest way to communicate what it is I was trying to accomplish or what my question was. And I would translate it using Google Translate, and then I print it out on a piece of paper in 100 pixel font, point font, and then I would put it up on the glass and just hope she had no follow-up questions. And that's how it went for 2 years. And it was the same woman the whole time who led me to believe that she didn't speak any English, she didn't understand any English. And I never got mad. I don't want to say I was frustrated. I was more scared than anything, because I didn't feel like I had a right to be here. Until I got permanent residence, I never felt like I had a right to be here, that at any moment someone was going to show up at my door and say, it's time, get out, And that doesn't actually really happen unless you're breaking the rules of some kind. But, I don't remember ever getting mad or frustrated at her because well, yes, it does seem reasonable that someone at the foreigner's desk should at least speak the English. I didn't feel like I had the right to get mad about this because I still was a guest in her country. After I got approved for my second year, it was maybe I'd been here about 18, 20 months, something like that. I went in to go pick up my permit. And then she immediately starts speaking to me in fluent English. I was like, with a giant smile on her face, which I had never seen that woman smile. Every time I saw her, it was just a very deep scowl. And so she basically hazed me for the first year and a half. And then after that, it was all rainbows and ponies. And I gotta say, I have a special place in my heart for that woman. I really, really do. I have not seen her in many, many years. And then eventually they hired Maria, who I haven't seen Maria in a while, but I remember it being really big news in Split when Maria got hired. She's a younger woman with brown hair, short shoulder length hair, kind of like mine, because she was the first one who was willing to speak English to anybody. And that was a really big deal. So those are the two challenges I had. But other than that, what I said to this woman yesterday is like, for the most part, it wasn't that challenging because I felt like Croatians made it really easy on me. Really, really easy on me. They were always just so helpful and generous and kind and welcoming and all these things. So if I had trouble, I never feel like I really had to ask for help very often because I felt like Croatians saw that I was struggling with something, and then they're like, how can I help? My first landlord, I was struggling down the stairs with this giant suitcase because I think I had to go to America for something. He's like, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I gotta go to the airport. I gotta go back to Texas. And he's like, do you want to ride? I'm like, to the airport? Really? You want to drive me like 30 minutes to the airport just cuz? He's like, yeah, why not? I'm like, okay, thanks. Awesome, amazing. So yeah, for the most part, it really wasn't that hard. And so come on, like, it makes a whole lot of sense that I got so addicted to Croatia so easily because it just felt like a hug from the very beginning. And I'm okay with a little bit of hazing. I don't see any reason why it has to be super easy. I mean, the things that we appreciate most in life usually come with a struggle attached. So I'm cool with it. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Love this time that we have together. If you ever have a burning question, it does not matter how boring, mundane, or weird it is. We would love to hear it. So if you have one, just send us a DM and you may see it on a future episode of 5 Question Friday. So I'm Sarah of Expat in Croatia. And if you've just joining us and you've missed everything we said, it's okay because I will post a replay and a profile here shortly. I will see you next Friday for another edition of 5 Question Friday. Bye! Vidimo se! Ciao!